The dog wouldn't stop growling at the living room wall. Not the front door. Not the window. The wall. Then he lunged, jaws tearing through drywall and rotted wood, his paws digging with panic. Deputy Marlena Shaw tried to pull him back, but the old shepherd just whimpered and kept digging. And then the smell hit, and then she saw what was buried behind it. Subscribe for more true mystery stories like this. Your support helps us bring these forgotten cases back into the light. The old farmhouse at the edge of Rattlepine Ridge, where the pine trees thinned and the fog rolled in low, like a crouching animal. It had been vacant for years. Locals said the Vessler family used to live there, father, mother, one child, but no one remembered exactly when they left. Some said 2009. Others swore it was earlier. What brought the police out wasn't a body. It was a property dispute. The county was preparing to auction the land, and an assessor had gone to catalog the structure. He never made it inside. Called the sheriff's office instead, pale and sweating. Said he heard something moving behind the walls. Marlena Shaw pulled up in her cruiser around 4:17 p.m., tires crackling on loose gravel. Wind tugged at her collar as she stepped out. The air smelled like rain and rusted nails. Behind her, a Department K-9 handler opened the back of the truck. The old German shepherd stepped down carefully. "Easy, Brutus," the handler muttered. "Don't need you throwing a hip again." Brutus sniffed the ground and gave a low whine. Inside, the house was worse than Marlena expected. Mold crawled up the wallpaper. Plaster sagged from the ceiling like wet paper. A forgotten toy car rested on the kitchen floor. Wheels snapped off. Its plastic cracked with age. A child's drawing was still pinned to the fridge, faded crayon scribbled. A family of 3 with stick arms and wide smiles. The father's figure had an X scratched through his face. "Which wall?" Marlena asked. The assessor pointed with shaking hand. "Living room, near the fireplace. I heard it last night. Something scratching from the inside." Brutus walked in slow circles. He paused at the center of the living room and gave a short, low bark. Then he moved to the wall beside the bricked-up fireplace and growled. "Could be rats," Marlena said. The handler frowned. "He doesn't do this for rats." Brutus suddenly lunged. The drywall gave under his weight. He bit once, then again, splinters and rotted chunks falling like old leaves. He was frantic, whining, pawing at something inside. And then it hit. A sudden wave of decay, like meat left in a closed car through July. Marlena gagged and stepped back. The assessor turned away, covering his face. Behind the torn wall, something soft and pale peeked through. She drew her flashlight, crouched low, and slowly leaned in. There were bones. Tiny ones, wrapped in the remnants of a child's blanket. Still pink in the center, where mold hadn't claimed it all. And in the center, a cracked pacifier, fused with dust and old blood. "Oh, God," Marlena breathed. "It's a baby." She radioed it in, her voice flat. They'd need forensics. A crime scene unit. Cadaver dogs. But she knew what she'd seen, what she smelled. Brutus sat quietly now, tail still. He didn't bark again. Just stared at the wall and let out a single low whimper. The next morning, Sheriff Elroy Dunleavy stood in the ruins of the living room. Coffee steaming in one hand, Marlena's report in the other. No signs of forced entry. No outside damage. No recent activity. None. Marlena said. Windows were nailed shut. The back doors warped but locked. "Autopsy will confirm the remains are recent," he said, though they both knew better. The body, or what was left of it, had been in the wall for at least a decade, maybe more. There were bite marks on the ribs. Rodents. Brutus had found what was left. Marlena hesitated. "Sir, you ever remember the Vesslers reporting a missing child?" Dunleavy rubbed his temple. "That's the strange part. I looked into that this morning. They had a boy, Jeremiah, born 2003. No record of second child. So what's a baby doing in the wall?" No answer. Outside, the crime scene tape flapped gently in the wind. Brutus lay in the grass beside the patrol truck, calm now, his eyes still fixed on the house. The handler tossed him a treat. He didn't touch it. 2 days later, they brought in Julia Payne. the county records officer. She came with manila folders, birth indexes, and an old laptop that wheezed when it booted up. Her hair was tied back, her eyes bloodshot from hours spent reading bad handwriting. "I found something," she said quietly. They gathered in the station's back room. Marlena, Dunleavy, and one young rookie who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. County registry shows Jeremiah Vessler born March 2003. That's solid. But here's the weird part. She flipped open a second file. There was another birth registered to the same parents in July 2007. Female. No name listed. The box just says baby girl Vessler. Any death certificate? Dunleavy asked. None filed. No hospital records. No vaccination entries. After this entry, she vanishes. Marlena leaned forward. But someone had to fill out that form. That's not a typo. Exactly. I cross-referenced with school enrollments. No record of her attending. No medical visits. It's like she never existed. But she did. Marlena said, "We found her." A silence fell over the room. The walls seemed to tighten. "Who signed the birth registration?" she asked. Julia flipped back a page. Ruth Vessler. Mother. That afternoon, Marlena stood at the nursing home entrance, staring up at the peeling sign, Briar Hollow Assisted Living. Ruth Vessler had been here since 2018. Early onset dementia, paranoid delusions. She was 71 now, though her file photo made her look far older, sunken cheeks, deep lines around her mouth. The kind of face that looked like it had stopped hoping years ago. The nurse on duty led Marlena to a small day room where Ruth sat by the window, humming a tune with no words. She rocked slowly. Her eyes were glassy, but when Marlena stepped closer, they locked onto her like a hawk spotting movement in dry grass. "You look like her," Ruth said suddenly. "Who?" "The baby. She had your eyes." Marlena sat slowly, unsure whether to press or listen. Ruth blinked. Her gaze drifted to the wall. "He said she cried too much. That's why he—" Her hands began to tremble. Marlena leaned forward. "Ruth, what happened to your daughter?" The old woman shook her head violently. "She never happened. You understand? Never. There was only Jeremiah. But the birth record." "No." Ruth's voice cracked, raw and panicked. "We buried the papers. We buried the name. We took it out of our mouths." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "They'll hear," she whispered. "If you say her name, they hear you in the walls." The nurse stepped in gently, put a hand on Ruth's shoulder. Marlena stood. "She didn't hallucinate that wall," she said on the way out. The nurse's voice was gentle. "Ma'am, some things people do to survive, the mind tries to erase, but it leaves holes. Holes something else can crawl into." That night, Marlena returned to the farmhouse alone. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way Ruth had said they buried the name. Inside, the air was still heavy, but not cold. She turned on her flashlight and walked to the fireplace. The wall was still torn open. The crime scene techs had removed the body, but the space behind the wall, it was deeper than she remembered. Like a passage ran between the walls, back toward the kitchen. She stepped in carefully, boots crunching on broken plaster. There was another door inside the wall, narrow, hidden. It led into a crawl space wrapped in old insulation and stained blankets. And there, on the floor, were toys. A stuffed rabbit missing one ear, a rattle, a child's shoe, and on the wall, scratched into the wood with something sharp, maybe a fork, maybe fingernails, were the words, "My name is Sarah. Please don't forget me." Sheriff Dunleavy stood in the crawl space the next morning, hands on his hips, face pale beneath the brim of his hat. Marlena waited beside him, watching him take it in. The scattered toys, the writing on the wall, the darkness that seemed to cling to the corners even with the morning sun filtering through the broken roof. "She lived in here," he muttered. "That wasn't just a body dump." Marlena nodded. This was her room. There were scratch marks in the beams, deep, layered, not all made by a child's hand. They had missed this hidden space during the first sweep. The K-9 had only uncovered the body stuffed in the wall cavity. But this room was deeper and far more disturbing. Brutus stood just outside the entrance, refusing to come back in. Dunleavy ran a finger along the message carved into the wall. "My name is Sarah. Please don't forget me." His voice dropped. They never reported her missing, never even told anyone she existed. "The mother buried her memory," Marlena said. "The father must have done the rest." He looked at her. "You think Ruth Vessler killed her?" "I think Ruth let it happen." He looked away, jaw tightening. There were old cases like this. Silent crimes, buried secrets, families that carried shame like a second skin. But we're missing something, Marlena added, something more recent. He turned. "How do you mean?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out the toy rabbit they'd found on the floor. She held it out. "The dust pattern on this one's wrong. The others were covered, crusted with mold, rotted. This one's clean, like someone touched it, like someone was here recently." Dunleavy's brow furrowed. "We had this place locked. Then someone got in through another way." A chill passed between them. The air in the crawl space seemed to hum, faint and low. They brought in the structural engineer that afternoon, a man named Conrad Dale. Greasy ball cap, thick glasses, chain smoked while he walked the perimeter of the house. Said the foundation was stable but hollow in spots. He knocked along the outer walls, muttering to himself. Old homes like this? They settle, shift. People build weird stuff in weird places. Panic rooms, storm shelters. Seen one house where the owner bricked off a whole basement to hide his sister. "Can we get floor plan?" Marlena asked. Conrad snorted. "You're in Rattles Pine. Be lucky if the records office even knows the address." But later that evening, Julia Payne came through again, emailing Marlena a copy of the original 1974 blueprint. "Looks like there's an entire utility shaft that runs behind the chimney. And a basement crawl space not marked in the county property scan." Marlena stared at the diagram, eyes narrowing. "Show me." The door to the basement was hidden behind a rotting armoire in the master bedroom closet. It wasn't locked, just covered in old quilts and debris. Dunleavy, Marlena, and a new forensics officer named Brent descended with flashlights and gloves. The stairs were steep and narrow, creaking with each step. The smell got stronger as they went down. Not like rot this time, but like damp newspapers and mildew. Then the light hit the far wall, and they all stopped. There were photos, hundreds of them, taped, pinned, and glued to the wall in a giant, spreading collage. Children, mostly girls, all under age 10. Some were school portraits. Others were Polaroids, blurry and strange, taken through windows in parks at grocery stores. "What the hell is this?" Brent whispered. At the center of the collage was a photo that made Marlena's stomach tighten. A faded image of a little girl in a pink dress, clutching the stuffed rabbit. Her eyes too wide, her face too thin. Sarah. And under it, a date. July 16th, 2009. Her birthday? No, it was tomorrow. "Whoever did this," Marlena whispered. They remembered. They had buried her, denied her, but someone, perhaps the father, had kept coming back, leaving things, watching, and not just her, other children, too. Dunleavy took a shaky breath. "We need to find Jeremiah." Marlena blinked. The brother? He'd be 22 now. Last known address was 3 counties over. If his father did this, and he knew, we need to find out. "But what if it wasn't the father?" she said. Dunleavy looked at her. "What if it was a son?" They located Jeremiah Vessler through DMV records. Lived alone in a trailer off a back road in Dry Hollow. No arrests, no record of employment. His social media was blank, just a single account, inactive since 2016. They arrived just before midnight. Marlena rode shotgun. Brutus was in the back, alert, ears up. The trailer was silent. No lights. A half-burned porch light flickered as moths spun around it. Marlena knocked. Nothing. Dunleavy called out. "Jeremiah Vessler? This is sheriff's office." "Open the door." No answer. Then Brutus growled, sharp and sudden. He leapt out of the cruiser before the handler could stop him. The dog charged around the side of the trailer, barking hard. "Go!" Marlena shouted. They followed him through the weeds and overgrown brush. Brutus pawed at the back of the trailer, nose pressed against the aluminum siding. Dunleavy stepped up and kicked hard. The panel gave. Just enough. Behind it, a crawl space. And inside it, photos. Again, stacks of them. And notebooks. Pages scrawled with what looked like diary entries. Marlena grabbed one. "She told me she'd come back on her birthday. That's when I'll dig her out. That's when we'll be a family again." "Jesus Christ," Dunleavy muttered. Another notebook was filled with childlike drawings. One showed a girl on the wall, smiling. Another showed a man with an axe. Another, a dog with red eyes. Then they found the list. Children, names, ages, dates. Many were crossed out. Sarah was at the top, but others weren't. Next, Ava, age 7, red hair, lives near the lake. Scheduled July 17th. Tomorrow. Morning came with low fog hanging over Rattlespine. The lake shimmered under pale sunlight. Marlena parked beside a small house near the shoreline. A faded tricycle sat outside. A red-haired girl stood in the yard, blowing bubbles. She matched the photo exactly. Inside, her mother wept as Marlena explained. The sheriff's deputies set up a watch. Jeremiah Vessler hadn't returned home. His truck was gone. Brutus remained alert, kept circling, ears twitching toward the tree line. At 6:41 p.m., the radio crackled. Deputy Reese just found Jeremiah's truck near the Vessler house. Back doors open. They raced there. The house was cold, empty, but in the crawl space where Sarah had once been hidden, someone had started digging again. Fresh dirt, a small shovel, and a pink birthday candle, half melted. He'd been here. He was planning to bring her back. That night, Marlena sat in her cruiser outside the Vessler property, watching shadows move across the hills. Brutus was beside her, tense. She held the stuffed rabbit in her lap, thumb brushing the frayed fabric. She kept thinking about the room, the photos, the silence inside that wall. Who had really done it? The father? The mother? Or Jeremiah, brainwashed as a child, forced to forget, then obsessed with remembering? Was Sarah's death a murder, or a secret buried so deep it had grown into something else? Her radio crackled again. "Sheriff, we've got a lead." Jeremiah was spotted heading west through Briar Hollow. He's armed. Marlena looked at Brutus. The dog's ears perked. Time to end it. The road to Briar Hollow twisted through cedar groves and long, empty fields. No streetlights. No signs. Just dirt and gravel and shadows that stretched too long. Marlena gripped the wheel tight, her knuckles white. Brutus sat beside her, head low, watching the world pass with eyes that missed nothing. The radio buzzed again. "Suspect was last seen near the old rail yard," said Deputy Reese. "Possible foot pursuit in progress." "Copy," Marlena replied. 10 minutes out. She pressed harder on the gas. The wind rolled through the open window like a warning. They found Jeremiah in the rail yard at 9:12 p.m. He was crouched behind a pile of rusted freight containers, sweat soaking through his flannel shirt, hands covered in dirt. In one fist, he held a small shovel. In the other, a candle, pink, just like the one they'd found in the crawl space. When the floodlights hit him, he turned, squinting like he'd just woken from a long sleep. "Drop it." Dunleavy called out from behind cover. Hands in the air, Jeremiah. But Jeremiah didn't run. He knelt slowly, placed the candle on the ground, and whispered something no one could hear. Brutus growled. Marlena stepped forward, careful, measured. "I know what you've been doing," she said. "I saw the room, the photos, the notebooks." Jeremiah looked up. There were tears in his eyes. His face was sunken, jaw twitching like he couldn't quite hold still. "I'm not crazy," he said softly. "You don't understand. She needs it. Every year. The candle. The toy. She wakes up when I forget." Marlena swallowed. "Who told you that?" He stared through her. "Dad did." And just like that, the pieces clicked. The wall, the secrecy, the silence. "It wasn't you who killed her," she said. He shook his head, laughing bitterly. "No, but I was the one who locked the door when she screamed." Marlena's stomach turned. Jeremiah dropped the shovel. "I was 9. I thought she was a rat. Dad said not to open it. He said Mom would cry if I did. So I didn't, not until the smell got bad." Dunleavy stepped closer now, weapon lowered. Jeremiah didn't move. "I see her in my dreams," he whispered. "She walks down the hall. Her feet don't make sound. She stands beside my bed and just waits." Brutus barked suddenly, a deep, sharp sound. Jeremiah flinched. "Don't let the dog near me. He hates me." "He's not the only one," Dunleavy muttered. They cuffed Jeremiah without a fight. He barely seemed to notice as they led him away. He called out over his shoulder, "She remembers, even if nobody else does." In the days that followed, the Vessler farmhouse was sealed off for good. Evidence teams cataloged the wall, the crawl space, the photographs. Dozens of families were contacted. Most had no idea their children had ever been watched. The notebooks were filled with names from libraries, parks, grocery stores. Nothing physical had happened, just obsession. Jeremiah had become his father's shadow, a boy taught to forget, then punished for remembering. At the jail, he sat silent most of the time. On the third night, he asked for a candle. When they refused, he tore a strip from his bedsheet, braided it like a wick, and tried to light it with friction. "Birthday," he mumbled. The guards put him on suicide watch. Marlena didn't sleep. She kept thinking about the message in the wall, about the way Ruth Vessler had said they'll hear you in the walls. It wasn't just grief or madness. It was fear and guilt, deep guilt, the kind you pass down like a curse. A week later, Marlena stood at the edge of a quiet cemetery just outside town. A small wooden marker now stood beneath the pine trees. It read only, "Sarah Vessler, 2007 to 2009. You are remembered. No service. No crowd. Just Marlena." Brutus and a stuffed rabbit lay gently in the dirt. The wind whispered through the trees. Brutus let out a low sound. Not quite a whine. Not quite a bark. Just something that sounded a little like grief. Marlena knelt beside him, placing a hand on his head. "You did good, boy." She stood, looked out over the hills. The farmhouse would be torn down soon, the basement sealed, the memories boxed and filed and forgotten by everyone but the people who mattered. But some things don't stay buried. Some names don't stay erased. And sometimes justice doesn't come in the form of punishment. It comes in the shape of remembrance, of a child's name carved into wood, of a candle that never got lit, of a dog who wouldn't stop barking at the wall until someone finally listened.